One of the things I learned when I first joined Kindle is the Kindle was invented before the iPhone. So we didn't have this mental model of what modern browsing experiences were like when we built those things.
Yeah.
And so we just sort of invented them however many years ago, and over time needed to modernize to a modern home experience. Hi, I'm Jesse Lau. I am the head of product for a startup called Moxie. I just started quite recently, depending on when you saw this, so I don't have much to say about that quite yet. But my background is that I was a consultant in a number of different industries for about a decade. I went to business school at Dartmouth, Tuck, and I've worked in tech both in startups and at Amazon.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, Jesse, and I'm excited for the conversation. And
I'm
I want
excited
to
to be here.
jump right into it. So I know you were, before your current role now at Moxie, a product manager, a senior product manager at Amazon, and working on the Kindle team. And I'd love to just hear from you. Can you walk me through what is the full life cycle of getting a feature live at somewhere like Amazon? I think a lot of people on the outside of product management hear about building roadmaps, building features, and it sounds sexy and super cool. But the sort of nuts and bolts of how it actually happens at a big tech company, I think, are pretty mysterious. So would love to
Yeah,
hear your take on that.
yeah. I'll start by saying, working at a company as big as Amazon, there will be varying levels of risk tolerance depending on which part of the business you're in.
Yeah.
And I worked in Kindle and books, and so that is one of the most mature business at Amazon. It was how Amazon was founded, and so our ethos was probably more cautious than you might see in other parts of the business that are more early stage.
Yeah.
With that said, so much of it is similar, and so as we go through this, I'll really try to hone in on some of the like core Amazon components that I found to be sort of universally true across org, and for me, frankly, very helpful in sort of guiding who I am as a product manager.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
I'll talk about um, a big project I worked on, overhauling the homepage for the Kindle apps. So if you go back 100 years to the start of Kindle, we did not have a homepage. We said, oh, the Kindle app is for reading. We take you to the library. You get your books that you buy on Amazon.com, and then you read them in the app. And eventually we said, well, gosh, every
But
other
just one
content.
quick clarifying question. Like, I had an early Kindle. So when you say it doesn't have a homepage, you mean like when I pressed the button and saw the first screen, which was, I think, my books on a shelf? Is that what you're saying? Like that was there, but that's not a home screen?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, one of the things I learned when I first joined Kindle is the Kindle was invented before the iPhone. So we didn't have this mental model of what modern browsing experiences were like when we built those things.
Yeah.
And so we just sort of invented them however many years ago, and over time needed to modernize to a modern home experience.
Got it.
So when I took over the home team, the team had done the first step, which was create a tab in the bottom of the apps that said home and created visually the set of things that needed to be there. But it was severely under optimized and not at all modern. So what I did was I wrote the plan for and then executed against a series of 7 or 8 different features that in combination would represent sort of the modern experience for browsing and finding your next read on Kindle, the same way you might on Netflix for video or Spotify for music or podcasts.
Got it. Cool. And can you like, so I guess like one of the things that comes up in my mind as I'm thinking about it, like you joined Amazon, it sounded like they had some start of this experience. So as a PM leading this group, like you sort of inherited that idea that we should make this home screen better, and then you ran with it. Is that
Yeah. One of the ways we do visioning at Amazon is we call it 3-year vision. And that's just part of our planning process. We may actually rewrite a 3-year vision every year, or we may actually write it once every 3 years. It sort of depends on which part of Amazon you're in. But we had written a 3-year vision that said, we want the homepage to be modern. And we, so this was before I joined, and there were designs that kind of had all these modern ideas. Almost none of them were practical or relevant for us, but all of them were representative of the kinds of modern experiences we wanted customers to have. So we had that sort of concept car behind us to help us visualize what sort of the overarching goals of the organization were when I got there.
Got it. Okay. And so what was like the next step?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what I did, and then I'll talk about a really famous part of Amazon called the PR FAQ, which I didn't do for this specific project, but I think is worthwhile probably for folks to hear about. So for this project, I wrote what is called a BRD, a Business Requirements Document, and so essentially, I wrote the problem statement. What is the problem statement that the customer is facing? I wrote customer stories around what objectives we wanted customers to be able to achieve, and then I wrote essentially a series of features that I believed were the ones that would best address the customer stories and ultimately the problem statement. For me, and this is not necessarily an Amazon thing. This is more of a team by team, case by case basis. But for me, I prefer to work in a way that is very iterative and collaborative. So in that document, I also have my tech leaders write their tech plans for how they will execute against these objectives. And I would have my designers draft not the full designs, but idea spaces of how these features might look. And so by the time we bring this document to leadership to review, all of our team, from myself to the designer to the tech leads, we're all bought into the idea. We've all sort of wrestled with the most difficult stones already, so that that we've got good answers for leadership.
Okay, cool. Can I ask a few follow-up questions on that, just to tease out some details? Like, at Google, we often called that type of document like a PRD, at least in the group I was in. So, whatever, minor difference. But over the course of my career, I've seen a ton of different types of PRDs, BRDs, or specs, as they're called at some places. Yeah. And some I've seen, like some companies that do like super short. It's basically like a 1-pager. Yeah. And then I've seen on the other end of the spectrum where it's like a 20-page document and there's a ton of detail in there. Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, for that BRD, if you can remember, and like roughly, when it was just the product stuff that you were writing and the business requirements before your tech leads and your design leads added some content, like how long was that original draft you put together?
Yeah. Oh, good question. So first of all, let me fully reiterate what you've seen. That is also true here at Amazon. Sometimes folks write 20 pagers and sometimes they write 2 pagers. To me, the criteria that you're trading off on, depending on the length of the document, is specificity, and that specificity essentially, I think, plays out in terms of how much do you want to predefine the work versus how much do you want to collaboratively solve the problem with your partners. And I lean towards collaborative resolution, so shorter docs. Yeah. This doc, probably before adding all that other stuff, was 2 to 3 pages.
Okay, got it. Cool. And then you were saying, okay, so we've got the doc, design and tech leaders have weighed in. I think you were alluding to now we can like sort of go to leadership. Can you talk me through a little bit, like what does sort of getting buy-off or sign-in look like?
Yeah, so ultimately, we took the doc to leadership and presented it in a way that showed that we were going to be thoughtful stewards of the business without having clear answers to all of the questions that we had as we were going. So we presented it as a multi-stage experiment plan rather than like here's the final step, right? Here's the final product. And we presented it in concert with an organizational goal that reflected that. So our goal wasn't launch this massive feature, it was launch these 7 features, or launch at least, I think we said like launch at least 5 features, each of which delivers incremental benefit to the customer when measured independently. And the goal was still make a modern app, essentially, make a modern homepage, but we will arrive there iteratively through experimentation and thoughtful stewardship of the business.
And when you presented this plan to leadership of this series of experiments that are going to modernize the home screen experience, is this the classic, I forget the term for it, but like the white page meeting where there's a specific like did they read the BRD at the beginning of this meeting and then you all talk through it, or like did that happen in this case, or is that just something that like
that's
Amazon lore and sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't?
Yes. So not only does that happen, it happens now in almost every meeting, and I think has changed quite a bit since we started working remote, to the point that it probably happens more than it needs to. And I'm hopeful, we're just returning to work this month, but I'm hopeful that returning to work is going to actually create a lot more opportunity for serendipitous meetings besides this kind. But let me talk a little bit about that infamous meeting, because I do find it to be, first of all, very strange for somebody who's not at Amazon. And second of all, like really valuable in a lot of different ways. So the most iconic document that we write at Amazon is called the FAQ, the press release and then frequently asked questions document. There's 6 pages, and about 1 page of that is a press release, and the remaining 5 pages are frequently asked questions. The purpose of the thing that we call press release is to give a point of view on the product that is customer informed and customer language, that is entirely associated with the leadership principle we have called customer obsession. And it is really difficult for PMs who first come here to do a good job of, because I can't tell you how many first versions of PRs I've read that is just a listing of features, right? Yeah. And I 100 times have said to my team members, I don't care about the features. I want to know what the customer feels. I want to know how they experience this. And so that getting into the PR state really helps with that. Now, I personally, one of the things that has evolved over time is you don't actually have to write a press release. Sometimes you write like pretend TechCrunch article, or there's other ways to reflect the customer perspective besides just in a press release. Yes. So there's a little more flexibility to it today. Then quickly, I'll just on FAQs, we have a couple of standard ones. It's not terribly dissimilar from any other business case one would write. We just write it in the form of questions, right? So there's a couple of really interesting things that we have. We have something called tenets, which I find a lot of value in, that help us make decisions around the project. And then we have something that I found very useful that you probably used in your jobs as well, but we call it a tranche plan. And in the tranche plan, we list not technical milestones, but individual milestones that are associated with unique customer experience changes. Okay. So the most simple basic change that I can make that is going to affect a customer is tranche 1. And then tranche 2 is the next customer facing milestone, until you get to tranche 7, which is the entirety of the product that rolls up to the PR FAQs description.
Got it. And so it is that number 7 tranches like an Amazon specific thing? You're just saying in this case for your home screen feature, you had 7 tranches that we're going to get to what
Exactly.
we're ultimately talking about in this press release of how this thing is going to feel when a
Exactly.
customer
I
has it
mean,
in their hands.
getting too much further out than 7, you're going to have trouble like stating with specificity
Yeah.
what it is you're doing. So usually I would say there's like 3 to 5 tranches. So
Got it. Okay.
beyond that, it's hard to be clear with what you want to do.
Okay. And so, okay, so you have this doc, you go to this meeting. Sounds like you got approval. Like they signed off on it. You like how much like you walk me through a couple of the sort of key steps to get that first tranche live. Like what happened then?
Okay, what was the first tranche? Um,
Or any of the tranches, like it doesn't matter in
yeah,
particular,
no,
but like
what okay, so I'm trying to think of which one might be the most interesting. Um, we we launched um, this really elegant, simple feature that had a massive change on our customers' experience, which is a feature we call subscription badging. And
okay.
it was everywhere else, or it's not everywhere else. It's in most other places on Amazon, but essentially, Amazon has 3 or 4 different book type subscriptions that you can either purchase or get for free as a Prime member. The most prominent one is called Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
And
Yep.
the books that are available in Kindle Unlimited, if you're a Kindle Unlimited customer, you get for free, right? Or it's a part of your
Yeah,
subscription.
right. Yep.
It's a big difference between Netflix or Spotify, where everything you look at is free because everything is a part of your subscription. And so adding this feature just gives a lot more clarity to the customer about what they could start reading right away without paying any money for it.
And so the feature itself, it was just like a badge on the book icon or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I guess this may be a dumb question, but like in the past, how did those members know like whether they could read or not read the book if there was like what was the indicator?
You'd have to click into each one, and some of the if you've ever been to any content consumption app, you know that like there's a bunch of rows, right? And each row, we call them, they're called carousels or shovelers or cards, but each row, each card has a set of content that's selected for a specific reason. And a few of our rows would say, great books in Kindle Unlimited, and you would know that all the books in that row were from Kindle Unlimited. But there'd be other rows that were more diverse and would
Yeah.
have some Kindle
Like just
Unlimited.
like a sci-fi row and some stuff is Kindle Unlimited and some isn't. You'd have to click. Yeah.
Exactly. So this sounds pretty easy, right? Okay, this book's in Kindle Unlimited. Slap the Kindle Unlimited logo on it. You're
Yeah.
done. We ran into so many fascinating problems along the way for this. So let me just give a couple of examples. I'll try to be appropriately vague. um, one of the things that you'll see is if you're a Kindle Unlimited customer, every single book that's available is going to say Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
If you're not, you're going to see some of your books labeled Prime because they're available for free to you as a Prime member. And if you're not a Prime member, you're going to see something totally different.
Okay.
And so in order for us to serve those badges, we need to both know, A, what is the current catalog for Kindle Unlimited and Prime? And then B, what is your current status as a customer? And so each time we load home, we have to go ask those questions of the service.
Yeah.
And with, tens or hundreds of millions of calls a day, that gets extremely expensive. And so launching this feature was actually very costly, and very costly in like lots of different ways, depending on how our different devices and apps made calls to the servers. And so we had to go through this really, really complex process of essentially refactoring our code so that we could make those calls in ways that weren't prohibitively expensive. And it actually took much longer than one you would expect. The result was massive. I mean, we saw not surprisingly, just a step change increase in the way our customers interacted with our app, especially our Kindle Unlimited customers, who represent a pretty high percentage of the total customer base.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like that example highlights some of the very stark trade-offs of working as a product manager in big tech, where it's like, you're like, hey, I'm just trying to put a badge here if this book is in Kindle Unlimited. But then like the complexity of doing it in a massive organization of like, hey, we got to check if they're a Prime customer because they have this subset that's available to them. Then we got to check if you're unlimited, and like, you know, maybe doing those calls. I don't actually totally understand why that many calls would be that expensive, but it sounds like there was something there that really made them expensive. And so that is an issue that you have to deal with at a really big organization, and probably took a while, I'm sure, to, sounds like, refactor the code and work through that. Maybe the calls were being made repeatedly or whatnot. I don't know all the details, obviously, but then like the flip side is like, you get the badge there, and the badge, like, it makes so much sense, right? Like, even when I heard the feature, I was like, well, what was there if there wasn't a badge before?
Exactly, right?
Like, the impact is probably, like you said, step function. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like, so we dealt with a lot of crap, but then like we launched this feature and like amazing things happen.
You know, it's
Which is
one
not
of
an
the,
experience that all PMs have. Like, you can toil away for a long time, launch something super quickly, but like no one ever sees it and no one ever cares.
the dual sides of the sword of working at a, I'll say working at Amazon, and in, you know, in a very mature business within Amazon. The dual sides of the sword are, on one hand, changes that you make are oftentimes obviously improving. And so you're able to measure in the, you know, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars your impact and relatively small changes. And the flip side is that it is A, very hard to do, and B, we place an exceptionally high priority on the quality of experience for our customers. And so have very low tolerance for risks or issues that show up. So it takes longer to do small things, and those small things have massive impacts.
How long do you think it took to get the subscription badging feature done?
I mean, probably from like an actual amount of time that folks were working on it, 4 months, 5 months.
Cool. Anything else you want to add about like this particular, like the process of getting feature from like all the way where we started conception to like launched and, you know, had a huge impact on Kindle Unlimited? Sounds like reader numbers, at least.
Yeah. Anything else I want to add? Um, you know, why don't I talk about a mistake that I made along the way, which was not even along the way, but at the start, which was that my goal was to have a modern home, and there was a lot to do, and each of the things to do, I felt really confident were going to be winners. We took a goal to say all of them were going to be winners, and here we are today. We've achieved that goal. Every single one has been a winner over the course of a year and a half. However, I didn't, because I was so focused on that, I didn't set the next 3-year vision. So here we are, done. It was like a lot of work, and my team, I'm no longer directly responsible, but my team is saddled with my mistake of having to write a new 3-year vision that should have been written a year, 2 years ago, because we set ourselves sort of a finish line, and then we got to the finish line without setting another finish line further out. And that was a mistake. And so I think that's something that's important for product managers, is to always have a roadmap that is further away than you can conceivably touch. You know, for startups, that might be 6 months out. For us, it's 3 to 5 years out. But you always need to be able to have a vision that you can see and work towards, even if you never realize it.
Yeah.
But something to work towards.
Yeah, that makes sense.